Yesterday, AMD announced price cuts to the RX 6000 series, and, well, two things stood out to me right away, and I don't think they're the things that probably stood out to most other people. You see, I suspect most people fixated on the price drops of the high-end Navi 21 cards and missed a couple of bombshells. Number one, the RX 6650 XT is now only $299, and if you go to Newegg, it really is. It's actually below $299 for a couple of models, which this thing is a solid 20 to 30% stronger than the 6600 non-XT, placing it close to a 3060 Ti and 1080p performance in many games. I mean, look, I've been recommending the 6600 at $250 or less pretty much across the board to anyone looking for a temporary graphics card. At this point, that extra 20% to 30% money for that much more performance that can honestly get you just truly enthusiast grade 1080p or even good 1440p 120 hertz gaming performance, yeah, I think the 6650 XT is now definitely worth looking at, especially if you're not gaming in 4K. But that's not the only card that stood out to me on that AMD discount pricing chart. The other one that did was the 6500 XT. Let me explain. Earlier this year, I did a series of videos breaking down why the 6500 XT costed what it did. I wasn't defending it or saying I liked it, or I didn't even really agree that AMD should have launched the card in the way that it did. But let's not get into all of that again. Whether I did a good job of explaining it or not, all I was trying to say back then that because RAM prices had quadrupled, because shipping costs had skyrocketed, that card, that the AIBs I talked to from the BOM costs I had also seen as well, it really was making pretty standard margins at about $200, with some AIBs, depending on where they assembled the cards, making almost no margins, even a little above $200. So I said, though, back then, that if shortages were to get better, that if prices were to start coming down, that I could see AMD making decent profits down at $170. And surprise, surprise, that's the price AMD went down to once shortages have gotten better. And I put this out there not because I still even think you should really buy that card. To be honest, I would still definitely go for like a $240 6600 or $300 6650 XT. I'd just spend the extra money to get that massive boost in performance. But it does show that when I'm breaking down BOM costs in my NVIDIA's Ultimate Play video, and when Steve talks about BOM costs for his RTX 3060 leak that also came out in 2020 next to my Ultimate Play leak, that these are based on real numbers that we have now seen once shortages got better. I'm not guessing. These cards have real costs, real reasons for costing what they do that, well, you can reverse engineer, and with a little checking from some of your sources, prove that there is a minimum price these cards are going to always have. Or at least there's a minimum price these cards need to have if a company manufacturing them and selling them new wants to make a profit at all and stay in business. And it's not just opinion or me pretending I talked to somebody. This is all backed up now. My Ultimate Play reporting, Gamers Nexus reporting on the razor-thin margins of an RTX 3060 near $300 by the recent unfortunate news of EVGA leaving the graphics card market. They've gone on record saying that there is a price point where they just weren't making money on 3080s anymore. And to be fair, I do suspect that price point was actually a bit lower than how it was communicated to us. They may have been, I don't know, pointing to the worst case scenarios. But at the same time, even if I think you're probably still making a small profit at $700 with a 3080, I don't know that you really are at $600. And there is a very real reason that to this day, you're seeing AIBs fight to not let their 3080 models quite hit MSRP, unlike AMD. You see, this is where we get into BOM costs, which this video is really about, and about pricing advantages a more smartly designed architecture can have when the going gets tough. I am told directly, and this was something I reached out to a bunch of people about right when I saw the AMD price drop information, that AMD isn't losing money as badly with their price drops compared to Nvidia, that, well, some AIB models with elaborate coolers are probably at cost or a slight loss at the new MSRPs AMD has stated for their RDNA 2 lineup, that with a little bit of help from AMD financially and a few other, and like focusing on the cheaper to make models, that they can still make a small margin, a small profit at the new MSRPs for RDNA 2. Those 6650s XTs you're seeing at 300, they're probably making a small profit there, unlike Nvidia, who just can't seem to get the 3060 to its MSRP ever for years. Now, I know it is true that last year for a few months, RDNA 2 graphics card pricing skyrocketed even a bit above MSRP more than what Ampere cards were doing, but that's because RAM prices went up and AMD's cards typically gave you more RAM than Nvidia cards. Now, RAM prices are back down and AMD's back to having a pricing advantage against Ampere. And from the sounds of it, like I've covered in the past 2 videos from me, it does sound like that pricing advantage is going to be doubly true with RDNA 3, but now I also know generally not just what RDNA 3's costs are looking like, but what the real margins are for Lovelace as well, and I even have BOM costs for Alchemist, and I want to leak those things to you in this video, but first an ad from a sponsor. This fall, where you're trying to stay warm and avoid scary activation fees for Windows software, consider using cdkeyoffer.com. cdkeyoffer.com is a long-term sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead and its community for any time anyone in this community needs legitimate Windows keys and doesn't feel like paying excessive monopolistic licensing fees to get access to them. But that's not all they offer either. They also have great deals on PlayStation, Steam, Origin, and Uplay keys, and physical products like gaming chairs and keyboards as well. They are always running sales, but make sure you use the best codes possible provided for the Moore's Law is Dead community. Use the link in the description or on screen, and then use the code BROKENSILICON to get 25% off Windows codes or die shrink for 3% off everything else on the website. This really does help Moore's Law is Dead when you use these keys and click these links, and it helps you pay reasonable prices for products that, let's face it, you just kind of need sometimes and you don't want to overpay for. Go to cdkeyoffer.com today. Alright, so in the first part of this video, I talked about how AMD can maintain those new RX 6000 prices for the next few months while they stem the tide against Lovelace before launching RDNA 3. Let's talk about Nvidia. Can Nvidia maintain the MSRPs that they've touted for their new Lovelace series? Well, let's get right into some quotes from sources here. One source tells me at an AIB that they really will have SKUs at MSRP and that even their liquid-cooled models aren't that much above MSRP. They have no worries. Nvidia left room for acceptable profits. And another AIB, which I can't show any quotes from, gave me some pricing sheets, and yeah, they really can keep things within 20% of MSRP with SKUs at MSRP. If you see any AIB models being sold vastly above MSRP, they have Ampere profit margins like they did during the shortage. But anyways, let's get to the other source. Another source tells me that AD104, the one used in the 408012 gigabyte, 4070, sorry, again, I have this horrible cough this week, that is a BOM cost a bit below the RTX 3080. BOM cost means bill of materials, by the way. Some people have been asking that. And he says that it seriously is, though, then more expensive to make than GA104. That they found out about the MSRP when Jensen announced it, and that it was higher than expected. They were expecting the 408012 gigabyte to sell for $700 to $800. Right about there would be acceptable margins, but I guess they really do, or Nvidia really does want Lovelace's pricing to start firmly above where Ampere cards are selling at because they're desperate to get rid of old stock without completely losing a mountain of money on every 3090 they sell for below $900, which is happening now. Then, a third source also told me that apparently, and I do know this is one of those sources that doesn't usually give me a lot of details, but I do know works at Nvidia, told me that around the office, again, they saw the pricing information when Jensen announced it, just like all of us did, that they were shocked that it was always going to be an expensive architecture. They knew that. They're going with, some special version of TSMC's 5nm node, big die sizes. They're pushing power, complex board costs, and cooling. They knew this would be a premium generation, but they really didn't think the 4080 12GB would sell for this much, in that around some parts of Nvidia, they're honestly hoping RDNA 3 gives gamers a decent option below $900 for at least some high-end graphics card in the new lineup. So to summarize what you should expect out of Lovelace pricing, look, the RTX 4090, it does cost a lot more to make than a 3090, but the 3090 had an over 100% markup. So it doesn't need to cost that much more if Nvidia is willing to accept the standard 40 to 60% margin that they want to accept. And it seems like what they've done with the 4090 is price it honestly at $1,600. They're making good margins, not crazy excessive. These nodes this node is very expensive. It has a ton of RAM. But yeah, AIBs are happy at that price point. It seems like you'll be able to get some of them between $1,600 and $1,800, with it often being close to the MSRP, if not at the MSRP. The 4080 16GB, that probably could have been $1,000 with the standard Nvidia margins. Again, this is an expensive generation. The 1200 though, they're milking you. And the RTX 4080 12GB, personally, if they were not being crummy, I think they should have called it the 4070 Ti and priced it at $700. But that's not what they're doing. They want it firmly above Ampere pricing, where Ampere prices are gravitating towards on the new market, because they still have so many of those to get rid of, and so they're milking out of the gate. But that means the price could come down on that 4080 12GB if nobody buys it. It's not going to come down. I never expected it when I saw the specs to be below $600. Let's put it that way. So if anyone says it should cost $400 eventually, not unless they're making a big loss on that graphics card, guys. It's not going to be a $400 card. But I could see it drift maybe to $800 or lower. It's just going to depend on how many people rush out and buy it when it launches. All right, then. So I've talked about AMD. I've talked about Nvidia. Let's now talk about Alchemist a little bit. I have BOM costs for Alchemist. Again, that's bill of material costs. I know what it costs to build an Alchemist graphics card, but I have to be a little careful how I communicate the pricing to you guys, and I put a lot of thought into it because, well, again, just think about Ampere versus Lovelace. Lovelace graphics cards seem to be ranging from priced honestly to milking a bit, but that means there's some cushion to go down in price, right? Just because Nvidia says a card has an MSRP doesn't mean it is completely honest. Ampere, Nvidia just set MSRPs that were completely unrealistic. I don't know if Intel is going to choose to be realistic and make a 10 to 30% profit on their graphics cards, or if they're just going to sell them at a loss to get rid of them and save face, because I think they might do that. But enough yammering. Let me get to the Alchemist pricing information. All right, Intel Alchemist Pricing Leak, September 23rd. So, I have to emphasize that Intel can choose to lose money on Alchemist, and I really think they might in order to save face, as I said earlier. I don't know how Intel is going to compete with an RX 6650 XE, for example, which is now being found below $300 oftenly, without making razor-thin margins or losing money per card sold. The ranges below are based on a lower and upper estimate derived from the BOM cost for purchasing 1,000 cards in bulk from Intel, and then you add the coolers and stuff. And so I've taken what the BOM cost is for these cards to be sold to OEMs and AIBs, and then they would add a cooler, and I'm accounting for what I believe the cooler cost will be for each model. In the red, I believe they're losing money if they price it that way. At the green, they're making an okay profit. All right, the A770 16GB, between $349 and $449. If they were to price this card, which again has a 6nm die size that is the same roughly as an 8nm 3070 Ti, if it's at $350 with double the RAM of a 3070, they're losing money. At $450, I actually think they're making a profit. All right, the A770 8GB. I believe this is a card that Intel's likely to target at $350. Right about there, they're probably just about breaking even. But if it's at $400, they're making a profit. At $320 or lower, they're losing money. At the A750 8GB. Again, remember, this is still a 225-watt card. Below $300, just like with the 3060, and they'll be losing money. Vice Gamers Nexus covered at $350, slight profit. All right, A580 8GB. This is the card that I believe will perform fairly similar to an RTX 3050. If they sell it for the frankly fake RTX 3050 MSRP of $250, I think they're losing money, but they might have to. At $300, thin profit. And the A380. A lot of you will be confused I'm including this, but I have the BOM cost for the A380, so I thought it would be worth including. At about $130, I'm pretty sure people are losing money. Yeah, that means I'm telling you guys, I think ASRock is breaking even or barely profiting for that single fan model they're selling on Newegg right now. And I think that other model that just hit the American market, I think that's kind of the pricing required to make a decent profit margin. Look, guys, it's a 6GB card. If AMD is making okay profits on a 6500 XT at $170 with just 4GB, then a 6GB card kind of needs $180 to make AMD profit margins. At $130, I believe these cards are losing money, and I think ASRock is most likely breaking even. All right, then. So now I want to go through my current overview of the ARC launch schedule. I got this from talking to a few people at Intel. Again, everything here is pretty much in white text because everything with Alchemist is so bizarre and crazy that I wouldn't double down on almost anything anymore because even Intel doesn't seem to know what they're doing. But this is the best guidance I can give you guys for what to expect moving forward out of AXG. So Intel is going to brief OEMs at their innovation event. I was told this, I leaked this, I believe, last week, but I'm maintaining that. And that's about when Alchemist will launch or pretend to launch. That means that sometime between the end of September and possibly as late as the first half of October, Intel is going to conduct a very, very low volume launch of the remaining lineup, like including the A770 for retail. So if you want to go on Newegg and get this, give it another week or two. It will be there, but you're going to have to be quick to get one of these graphics cards. And that's because OEMs are finishing validation right now, and it's taken them a long time. They've actually, I'm told, rejected validation of Alchemist to Intel for months because they can't keep the cards stable for sale in Dell OEM systems. But this is eventually where I'm told Intel is going to dump the overwhelming majority of Alchemist stock. They're dumping it into OEM. And in fact, I have multiple sources telling me that it seems like they're going to just disable a bunch of the top die yields down to A580s and sell those at a discount and just try to get rid of all of them with Dell and HP and such. And I also have multiple sources continuing to tell me, just like I've already leaked, that Battlemage is looking like a single low-end die, possibly just for laptop. And Celestial's future is incredibly uncertain, with people not having a lot of details, or well, really any details at all. There's not a lot of optimism about what's happening with AXG by the time Alchemist is supposed to be out. I'm sorry, by the time Celestial is supposed to be out. And so in summary, ARC is looking like a family of low-end OEM GPUs as the plurality of outcomes for the foreseeable future. I say plurality of outcomes because I do maintain that desktop discrete ARC is effectively canceled. They're just not sure how to sell this to the public yet, nor how much of the gaming line to keep on life support over the next few years, where they take some extra time to decide if they're going to even cancel like laptop cards and stuff. If you're looking for a high-end ARC card to save the market this year, next year, or the following year, stop waiting. It's looking like almost one of the better case scenarios is just low-end laptop cards for most upcoming generations. And so there you go. I know this was a big video that went into pricing information for a bunch of different products, but there was a reason I wanted to do all of these leaks in one video. They're all connected. I have BOM costs for Alchemist, just like I had BOM costs for Ampere, and you guys can see how they line up, like why the 3060 Ti was almost never at MSRP. Well, it's a 400mm square die with 8GB of RAM. They're not making big profit margins at $400, just like how Intel is not making a good profit on an 8GB card of a similar die size if it's priced below $350. This is where the intelligent design in making graphics cards can't just be solved by money, because unless the market is booming out of control, the company that can make a given level of performance without murdering the cost to build the card completely is a company that's going to have a big advantage. And it's one that Nvidia is just not going to have with Lovelace. Recapping for you all here, Lovelace, well, Nvidia went all out on performance at the expense of cost. It's designed for the wrong market. Lovelace was designed for last year's market, but at the same time, they're not milking as hard on the 4090 as you might think. They're just milking super hard on the 4080 12 gigabyte. It can go down in price a bit, but it's not going to be priced like a 3070 near MSRP because it just costs more to make. Unlike AMD's offerings, that's the second thing, RDNA 2 is making thin margins where their new price points are at. That's what they're going to do to undercut Ampere, try to get rid of stock before they launch RDNA 3, which will almost certainly cost more than RDNA 2's price points for each tier, but not as much more as you're seeing with Lovelace. Well, in a world where AMD is able to undercut Nvidia with impressive efficient graphics cards like a $300 6650 XT, I just don't know how Intel can profit on basically any of the ARC lineup. All information I have is that Alchemist cards already, like the A380, are basically being sold at cost, and that Intel's just trying to get rid of what they manufactured earlier this year because it's just a loser. It's not going to make them money. If anything, it can be used as a widespread beta for working on drivers, but that's really all you should expect out of ARC launches over the next 2 years. Low-end OEM crap for working on drivers, nothing high-end to save them, because the fact of the matter is, it's not lazy, it's not that they're giving up, it's that Intel would be making a horrific business decision if they actually tried to compete with AMD and Nvidia in price to performance and performance at any point in the next 2 years in this horrifically oversaturated graphics market. And, well, that's the job of a company. Intel's job is to find the best way to maximize profits, not to find interesting ways for Raja Koduri to waste money every year. They can make money in data center, they can make money in some low-end laptop cards and work on drivers, but discrete, high-end cards are just something that would be a loser for revenue with Intel. And, yeah, that's it. That's gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to subscribe to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. From what I'm seeing, about half of you watching this video are not subscribed. It really does help us get more funding, honestly, if we have a higher subscriber count. So you're helping the channel if you subscribe, but if you really want to help, consider supporting our sponsors or supporting us on Patreon. We'll get podcasts like Broken Silicon early and ad-free. This new one will be another early release again, leaving breathing room for Zen 4. And then once Zen 4 is out, I'm going to have a really exciting guest who worked at AMD on segmentation. You'll be able to ask him questions on the Patreon. So all of that's there if you have the extra money. But otherwise, just thank you for watching.